all right with you, we'll start
Alrighty.
recording? Okay, perfect. We won't have you say and spell your first and last name, but you can say your first and last name and your title.
I'm Steve King, and I represent Iowa's 4th Congressional District.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us today. Big topic right now going on nationwide, and of course it affects people everywhere, including here in Siouxland, that stimulus bill being debated on Capitol Hill. Did you want to share your thoughts on that and where you think it should go direction-wise?
Well, we're a long ways apart, and it looks like Nancy Pelosi would like to spend more than $3 trillion, and Mitch McConnell would like to spend maybe real close to $1 trillion. I'm a little reluctant to be spending trillions of dollars myself, but it makes more sense the Senate version of this than it does the House version. Here's one thing that we saw from the very beginning on the Republican side of this is that when you extend people's unemployment check, it's hard to hire them to come back to work. But when you add $600 a week to that, it's really hard to get them to come back to work. And so this economy is flat, is stagnant. It lost 32% of its gross over the last quarter. That's the largest drop we've had, at least in my lifetime. And it's what we'd expect if you shut the businesses down. But now we need to get it up and going. It's time to get these businesses running. And that means that we can't be paying people not to work when we need them to come to work. And then I hear from people that they don't want to go because they're afraid to go to work, but they're happy enough to go to the grocery store and stand in line at Walmart and stand in line at, say, Menards, or pick your place, but they don't want to go to work. And so I think that that's where the battle is right now, and we're not close to getting a resolution on this. But Mitch McConnell in the Senate, they seem to want to have the unemployment extension go on with a $200 a week component of that for about a month, and then roll it back to 70% of what the standard wages would have been.
Is that something that you would support then, keeping some form of an extended payment or a supplemental payment?
I would lean in that direction, but I'd want to look at the whole bill, of course, first, because too often those last-minute things get thrown in there. But we're in a place where government has shut the businesses down, and by those kind of directives, and we owe it to people, not only the employees, but especially the employers. We're going to lose businesses. What we haven't seen is the wave of bankruptcies, which is just beginning, but I think we're going to see a whole wave of them clear out past the end of the year. Let's get ready for that. It's going to be a sad trail.
So after the election, and again, I wasn't here for this, I just came into the region, but with the primary elections and stuff, it is known that essentially these are your last few months in office. So, a lot of people want to know what's next for you. Do you have any last minute things that you really want to get done, some things that you will try to work on? Not to say last minute, but just some last few things that you really want to accomplish.
Well, there's one thing is I want to put the marker down on all of the bills that they didn't have enough vision to pick up and pass into law. And the scenario we have is you're up for election every 2 years. And so we don't have people that are looking over the horizon. That's always been my forte is what are things 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What are the generational things that we need to be dealing with now? So I'm putting together a bill that pulls all of those ideas together under one bill. And I want to put it down as a marker for history, and maybe we'll get that all passed and America will be okay. Maybe we'll collapse and fail in the middle of this and we'll look back at it and say, this is what we should have done. That's one thing. I want history to see that right. And then there's a couple of other things. There's the Winnebago land bill. And I'll be doing some discussion on that here yet today. But I'm the one that went down through and traced all of the treaties back and looked at the legal component and the Federal Circuit Court. And we worked out the kinks along the way, locally, state-wise, Corps of Engineers, and of course with the Winnebagos. And it is their land. They were not treated right. A deal's a deal. If you have a treaty, it's a treaty. And so I want to see that land transferred back to them, about 1,643 acres. And then another one is name the post office in Riverside after General Bud Day. He was a terrific friend, and at the time of his passing, the most decorated living American hero. And in fact, if you look back through the history all the way back to George Washington, there's only one person that's more decorated than General Bud Day, and that's Douglas MacArthur. And some think that he might have worked pretty hard to get some of his medals. Yeah, so Bud was a humble man, and he was a good shot, and he had a good sense of humor, and he had courage and bravery as an example for everyone in this country, for all of history, right out of Sioux City. And they need something to look up to, and that should be the post office in Riverside.
Sounds like that should be an easy fix to get that done. What's next for for the congressman? Are you completely done with politics? Do you foresee something in the future for yourself? And I don't know if you want to commit to that, but essentially, what's the next phase of your life looking like for you?
It's not going to be put my feet up, although I've got a nice comfortable chair on my deck. But I sat down in that comfortable chair and I began to type, and as of about a week ago today, I finished my book. And so that's now needs to go into production, and that's going to start here in the next few days, I hope. I'm not sure when it's going to be out yet, but people are going to be very interested in finding out the facts. And it's been fact-checked all the way through. I'm very comfortable with it, but as far as the facts are concerned. But this entire scenario, this plot that was put together needs to be identified. And the only place that I can get the truth is that they can't edit with, I want to say, the media piece that's come at it, or individuals even within my own party, and too many of them, by the way. The only place I can get the real truth out is in a book. And so they won't be able to do the edits in the book. It's going to be there. It's going to stand there. And many people at the national level and in the Iowa level with regard to politics are going to want to read that, and especially young people coming up, so that they can anticipate what this is really like, how bad the swamp actually is.
I was going to say, to be clear, if you want to address just briefly, you don't have to give anything away from the book, but what are some of the issues that you said you will be able to tell the truth about in this book? Just some of the issues.
Well, just to lay the chronological history of what happened when, and the moves that were made by whom. And so I don't want to quite say what they are yet until the book goes out, but there's lots of things that are scattered around through the news media, and it's possible to put together a fair amount of this from what's public access. But I lived it, and I know which ones were relevant and which ones weren't, and when they happened. So I've kept notes throughout all of this. I've got a fair amount of tape recordings as well, and there were people that stepped forward and just simply lied to the public, and it made a big difference. And so people need to know who that is and what they did, and how people reacted to it. But this is something that goes back 4 years. And of course, the history of my congressional service goes back longer than that. Then there's another thing that I'll be working on, and it's something that I had been starting to put together as far back as 2005, although it was a little piece here and a little piece there, and it was ramping up along the way. You've watched what's happened in the streets across America, especially in our major cities, Portland and Seattle and Minneapolis, Detroit and Washington, D.C., and you can go on with that. But the culture and the civilization of America is being fractured apart. And there are people that have just gone to war against American values, which are really Western civilization values. And the United States of America is the flagship for Western civilization. And I've made these points over the years. I've been on record with this more than 20 years ago, and I've been working it all along. I put together the leaders of those values across Europe, Australia, Canada, and the United States, and I was ready to launch an international organization to restore Western civilization for the world when this all blew up on January 10th, 2019. So that's something that I would pivot to that, and we'll see if there's an opening for it. I think that our civilization, our shared civilization, cries out to restore those values. And I noticed that there was a posting at the Smithsonian, the African American Museum and Culture, that a posting on there that said these are white privilege principles. They had that posted for several months until it came up here about 2 weeks ago, and people saw it. It was all the values of delayed gratification, hard work, faith and family, the core values that make America a great nation, and especially the heart of the heartland a great place to live. And those values were posted as somehow racist values because they were identified as white values. They're not white values, they're Western civilization values. They're the values that are keys for success in a free enterprise economy that lives under the rule of law, with strong family connections and a responsibility to the communities that we live in. That's what's made America great, and that's what made Iowa great, and the upper Midwest great. And those values must be restored. And so I think that's going to be where I pivot to that mission more aggressively, probably sometime after the first of the year.
And that leads me to my next question, or statement rather. Of course, social media amplifies a lot of things. As you call it the media, I'll call it the national media, just for lack of a more specific term, because we're the media too, but local news is, I would say, different. is there anything that you would like to address directly to your critics or clear up, or anything that you think was,